Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, where Major League and Minor League athletic trainers share insight into athletic training at the highest level. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Mike Frostad, who begins his second season with the Los Angeles Angels as their Director of Sports Medicine and Head Athletic Trainer after spending the previous 4 seasons as the Assistant Athletic Trainer with the World Series champion Atlanta Braves. Enjoy the show. Mike, welcome to Inside Athletic Training. We're thrilled to have you on for our 7th episode. We like to start each episode by asking our guests to share a little bit of information about PBATS and what the society means to you. So if you want to go ahead and talk a bit about PBATS and how it's influenced you and your career to this point so far.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks for inviting me on. It's an honor to be your guest. As far as PBATS goes, it's really an educational society, and our membership is dedicated to learning and making each other better every day. I feel that we all feed off each other. We challenge each other to be the best that we can be. One of the things that I really enjoy the most of being a member of PBATS is the different ways that we get to give back to the community. There's the internship program that PBATS hosts. It's a great way for up-and-coming athletic trainers to gain experience in the professional game. They're able to learn from some of the best in the business. And it's always a privilege to be able to share our knowledge with those interns who aspire to be in our shoes one day. The other thing is every year we host the Play campaign, promoting a lifetime of activity for youth. Great opportunity for local kids to get out to the ballpark. They get to partake in some activities on the field. And, maybe they're going to meet one or two of their favorite players. So, those are just a couple of the programs that PBATS spearheads, and to be a part of that really gives me a sense of pride.
Yeah, and Mike, you're currently the Director of Sports Medicine and the Head Athletic Trainer with the Los Angeles Angels organization. We'll get into your job and career path in a bit, but first, we like to take some time to share with our listeners a bit about the background of our guests and what paths led them to where they are today. So if you don't mind giving us a little background, where are you from? Did you play sports growing up? What got you into athletic training? And also how you found your passion for the profession?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. I'm a Canadian. Lived in the U.S. since 2004, but during the season I'm here, but I still reside in Canada in the off season, about 2.5 hours east of Calgary down the Trans-Canada Highway in Medicine Hat, Alberta. So being Canadian, I was really more of a winter sports person growing up. I played hockey. I was a ski racer. And then, in school, we had more volleyball and basketball for the indoor sports, but I never really did play baseball as a kid. But I think getting into sports at a young age, it kind of helped prepare me for some stuff along the way. And I think as far as athletic training goes, I would say probably in my last year of high school, we had some time in some classes where we did some sports medicine related things, and it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And once I got into the University of Calgary, we had an introduction to athletic therapy course, and that really is where I got my start. I just took it from there, and it was something that I was really just taken into and being able to work with the athletes at the collegiate level.
It's very interesting. We haven't spoke with anyone from Canada thus far. I know there's a couple of athletic trainers within PBATS from the area. Can you talk a bit more about what it was like growing up in Calgary and looking to get into, the baseball world? Did it pose any difficulties as the majority of the major professional sports are in the U.S.?
Yeah, in Canada, we call it athletic therapy, actually, and it's really the same. It's just got a different name, and it's not really as high a profile as it is in the United States. We don't have as many accredited post-secondary schools in Canada, and so there's fewer opportunities once you become certified. And the college teams there, I think in the U.S. it kind of is along the same lines where it's a lot of student athletic trainers and some main therapists for the school or main athletic trainers for the school are going to be certified, but there's just not as many opportunities. The high school sports don't staff any athletic trainers. So I worked in minor hockey as a student athletic trainer up there, and got to gain some experience that way, and never worked baseball till I was hired by the Blue Jays. And fortunately, that was one of the clubs in Canada that had a team, and the other was the Expos at the time. And it was a huge plus for me being able to work for a Canadian club. That opportunity didn't present itself. It would have been more difficult, and I probably would have tried to stay in hockey. But I'm glad that it didn't, and I'm fortunate to have some great experiences working in baseball.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And do you find that things have really grown in terms of the athletic training or athletic therapy in Canada, or are students who want to get into the profession mostly coming to the U.S. for college?
I think that there is some growth for it in Canada right now. The school that I did go to, the University of Calgary, they are one of the accredited schools, along with the other university in Calgary. They kind of co-host the courses, but they're pretty much spread out across the country. So every province will really have its own school. So you don't have a lot of choices. Whereas in the U.S., there might be 4, 5, 6 colleges within one state that have an accredited school. So, those opportunities are there, but, just to be able to do that in Canada, I do think it is a little bit more difficult. Yeah.
And we talked a bit about, obviously your limited choices to continue your education within the field, shifting gears a bit to what it takes to get into Major League Baseball, which is also quite difficult for anyone. It's such a, in-demand position in athletic training. Can you talk a bit about your path that you took to get to the big leagues? We know you spent time in Toronto, in Atlanta, which we'll touch on as you're now World Series champion, and now Anaheim. But share a little more with the listeners about your road to the big leagues and where you are today in your career.
Yeah, it's, getting into baseball, it takes a lot of determination and sacrifice. The hours can be long, but at the end of the day, it's so satisfying. And, for me, getting started, I started in Toronto in 1996, put in a lot of hours there, working in short season ball in the New York Penn League. I eventually worked my way up as the medical coordinator for the Blue Jays in 2005 and held that position until 2010, and finally got my call to the big leagues that year and started that started the 2010 season. And, I was with the Blue Jays for 22 years in total, all the way through the end of the 2017 season. Got to the Braves for 4 years, for 2018 to 2021. And now I'm just starting my second year as the director of sports medicine and head athletic trainer for the Angels. So all in all, this is my 28th season in professional baseball.
Wow, that's such a long time, and you've carved out such an amazing career thus far. I'm sure a lot of that you credit to people you've worked with. One name that comes to mind, George Poulis, who is with the Braves right now, and you spent a ton of time with in Toronto. Outside of George, who were some of the role models that you looked up to in the field of athletic training as you were coming up?
Well, I think the first one that comes to mind would probably have to be the head athletic therapist at the school in University of Calgary. His name was Dale Butterwick. Without him, I probably wouldn't be in the position today. He's the one that introduced me to some of the people at the Blue Jays back in I guess it was 1995. And that's where I really made my connections into baseball, started networking in there. And he's probably the main one that I would look to. But, once you're in baseball, there's so many other people that are such great baseball people. And, some of the PBAS Hall of Famers that have influenced my career, like Richie Bansell, Jeff Cooper, Gene Monahan. Those guys were so approachable. When you go to winter meetings and you see these guys, and you can just go up and talk to them, and they're willing to give advice to anyone there. And I'd say they helped. And then, a few of the main physicians that I look up to as well, like Dr. James Andrews, who most everyone in baseball or professional sports knows about, and even the late Dr. Lou Yoakum, former Angels doctor. And, both of these prominent surgeons are such huge proponents of what athletic trainers do day in and day out that I would have to say that group of people would be the people that I would say would be my role models.
And when you talk about the relationship with team physicians, which I think is very interesting, you've worked with such prominent figures like Dr. James Andrews, as you just mentioned. What is it like working with some of those people who you may have admired during your road to the big leagues?
Well, I think it's great because they really, looking up to them, they're kind of your idol, but then you get to work alongside them and they're your friend, first and foremost. And I think that's a huge thing. They treat everybody as equals, and we're all in the same playing field. We're all here to help everybody out. We want to help each other learn and help each other grow. And every one of those people that I named, I can definitely say are the ones that can do that without a doubt.
Sure. And you mentioned networking and meeting people in the game that really helped once you got into the game of baseball. What advice could you give to college students who are looking to get into athletic training and professional baseball, whether that's developing a skill set, personality and character traits? Is there anything that stands out that, you would provide as advice for those students looking to get into the game?
Yeah, I had mentioned it already once, but, determination and sacrifice. We spend a lot of time at the ballpark. Our families, we don't see our families as much. Everybody, I think, in baseball will say that their team is their second family, and it really is true. You almost spend more time with the guys you're around at the field every day than you do your own families. And but again, like you just touched on, also the networking part of it, I think that's so important. It can present opportunities when you least expect it, and fortunately, that's what happened with me. But you just have to put yourself out there and get noticed. There's some things that you can do to help that. There's always courses that are available in the off season for us anyway, like the baseball off season in the winter, where you can go into a specific, a baseball specific sports medicine course and meet other athletic trainers there that could potentially be your future employer one day. There's the conference in New York hosted by Dr. Ahmad, the FOR conference, and then also Dr. Andrews puts on his injuries in professional baseball conference each year. And, by going to those, you not only do you get to learn a ton of useful knowledge, but you get to, you never know who you're going to run into and who you might meet that could influence you down the road.
Sure. And shifting gears just a bit, and I mentioned at the beginning, in 2021, you earned a World Series ring with the Atlanta Braves. Clearly must have been absolutely an amazing experience. All the hard work paid off and actually got to that goal of winning the title. Can you share a bit about what that was like, how the season progressed, how you guys felt throughout the year of your chances, and any things that stood out in that season compared to the rest throughout your career?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it was unbelievable being part of a winning World Series team. And 2021, it was such an amazing journey. Some of the things that stood out, Hank Aaron passed away in the off season leading into that year, but he was with us the entire way without question. We had number 44, which was Hank's number. It was etched in the outfield grass all year. We won 44 games before the All-Star break, 44 games after the All-Star break. So we finished with 88 wins. We had the fewest number of wins out of any team going into the playoffs. I remember a couple days before the All-Star break, we were in Miami and Ronald Acuna Jr. tore his ACL and he's out for the rest of the year. So, we're thinking our chances are lost right there with the adversity of that. And fortunately, our front office GM, Alex Anthopoulos, he never gave up. We were a 500 ball club at the deadline. He added some key pieces that allowed us to win the division. And then going into the playoffs, like I said, we had the least number of wins, and I don't think we had the pressure on us. There was nobody wanted us to win. Nobody expected us to win. I shouldn't say they didn't want us to win, but I don't think they expected us to win. So, counting down those final outs in the ninth inning of that deciding Game 6 in Houston, and just being able to hug and celebrate every person that was involved, players, coaches, staff. That's just a feeling I'll never forget.
And I want to touch on a few things you mentioned specifically about that team. A lot of us fans remember watching and, seeing the Braves barely make the playoffs, the least wins for any playoff team, losing a player like Acuna in the middle of the year. What is the athletic trainer's role when it comes to, people go down with injury and won't be coming back? Is there any type of, mental or conversations you have with other players about, how we can keep things going and get towards that finish line?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of it, there's definitely some mental work that needs to be done. And, a lot of teams now are going into situations where they have a mental skills coach and they have their employee assistance program, and those are all great. But there's sometimes those players, they just want to talk with other people that they know and have gone through the same thing. So we'll reach out to other players that have had similar injuries to some of them, and just see what they did to get through it. And a lot of times that peer-to-peer really seems to help them get through their injuries. But yeah, the mental part of it can be huge. But then with the other players on the team, they're used to dealing with adversity without question. They deal with it every single day. So when something doesn't go their way, they just have to find a way to get through it and persevere.
That's very interesting. And I think, that was an amazing year for the Braves, for your career. You guys were named the athletic training staff of the year by PBAT. So all in all, 2021, just fantastic for you and your career. Moving on to where you're at today. You are in charge of sports medicine and the head athletic trainer with the Angels. And that can be an incredibly demanding job. I know a lot of people may think that athletic trainers show up for the game, get people prepared, provide treatment after the game, but really there's much more than that. Can you kind of explain what the day-to-day of your role is during the big league season?
Sure. Yeah. It's, you think that that's kind of what we do in general, but there really is a lot more to it. So for the most part on any given day, I'll show up about 6 or 7 hours before the game, and that gives me time to get prepped for the day. We'll have a daily meeting with our entire sports medicine staff just to go over, anything specific that we want to touch on for each player. If somebody needs something special that day, and just gives us a chance to make sure we're all on the same page. It's an open forum. Anybody can raise questions at any time. And, once we're done with that, at some point during the day, I'll meet with the manager to give him any updates. And, if anybody's questionable or out for that day, we'll kind of discuss it and just sort of go over what our plan is for them. That's how the day usually starts off, and then we'll get treatments going around 1 o'clock, 1:30, and that runs all the way up until batting practice, and helping to get the players ready there. Once batting practice is going, we get out to the field, make sure we've got that covered, keep an eye on the players that have programs that we're following for the day, and after BP, it's a little bit more treatment, get guys prepared for that last final time, and get them out to the field for the game, and then that's sort of where our day gets a little bit easier. We get to sit in the dugout. We can watch from the best seat in the house and just kind of keep an eye on things. We're constantly on alert because anything can happen anytime the ball's in play, but we never let our guard down. And it just gives us a chance for things to slow down a little bit for us is right during game time. And, once the game's over, we'll get back into the training room and do some post-game treatment, post-game exercises with players and pitchers. And then once our report's good for the day, we can get out of there.
And can you talk a bit about the difference in roles? Obviously you play, you have a couple of roles with the Angels right now in terms of being the director of sports medicine and the head athletic trainer. What exactly are the difference in the two responsibilities that you have with the club?
Yeah, so they really kind of go hand in hand, but really I think the main difference is if you want to break it into the two different roles. As the head athletic trainer, my main focus is the major league roster, the 26 players we have every day with us, day in, day out, that are available for the game that day. And I think as the director of sports medicine, my role expands a little bit further, where we're including the minor leagues as well. Constantly be in communication with the minor league coordinator and see how things are going in the minor leagues, especially with the 40-man players that are down in the minors, and also any of the top prospects. Just want to be able to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as their programs go, and I can help to keep the front office up to date on their status. So a lot of conversations with front office, with trainers and team doctors as well, just so we can have an informed decision on how we want to proceed with different players when they do get injured.
And is the role or the role you have communicating with the front office, is that kind of similar in terms of how you communicate with the coaches and the managers with the Angels as well?
It is. I think a lot of times I like to try and meet in person if we can, because it's a little more personable than having a text conversation or a phone conversation. But sometimes a quick text message is all they need just to give them a quick update status. And, but when we're around each other as much as we are, like the front office and the manager really need to have all the same information.
And you have a great staff there in Los Angeles, Eric Munson, Matt Biancuzzo, Rick Smith, really some talented athletic trainers. When you guys are looking to make additions to your staff, can you explain a bit more what you're looking for in a candidate, whether that's experience, a person's attitude, persistence, even some of the character traits you mentioned early about being determined. What do you guys look for, or for those, whether it's an intern or a entry level position in Anaheim?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to I agree with you 100% that the staff that I have here is fantastic, with Eric and Matt. And then, Rick Smith has been with the Angels for 46 years, and he's kind of the glue to the operation when it comes right down to it. He's in the background, but he's doing a ton of stuff that helps make us better. And we've also got 2 PTs on staff, Marco Segura and Robbie Williams, and everybody comes in and we all work together so well. And I think it's great having those guys. But looking to your question, as far as, what are we looking at when we are trying to hire somebody new? I touched on it a little bit earlier, but having some experience is really a plus. Whether it's working with a baseball team at college, an independent league team, doing a PBATS internship, anything that you can do that would give you a little bit of a slight edge over somebody else is going to be a huge plus for you. We do also like to see somebody that has a varied continuing education experience, with so many courses being available now, and somebody that can bring something different to the table, very beneficial to us. If everybody on the staff has the exact same skill set, then you can't branch out and try something new if one thing doesn't work. But if you've got that skill set that somebody else doesn't, then it makes you a little bit more valuable in my eyes. And of course, being bilingual doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, that's very important. A lot of our listeners are students and people looking to get in the game. So that's super helpful. I want to touch a bit on where you're at right now. So all of us as fans know that spring training is fully underway. And many of our guests, like Tomas Vera with the Reds, Ryan DePanflo with the Diamondbacks, have mentioned how busy this time of year is. I'd love to hear more about your day-to-day at spring training, and how that compares to what goes on during the big league season.
Obviously here, the biggest difference is everything's done during the day. Instead of playing games at night, you're playing early in the morning. But this year, with it being a World Baseball Classic year, we've got a lot more players in camp. The Angels are sending 19 players to the WBC between Major League and Minor League. So they wanted to have everybody that could be a fill-in once those players leave. They wanted to give them the full Major League camp experience. So we've got a large camp. We're right up around 80 players in camp right now. So there's a lot going on. It's definitely busy days. And we have every day we start with a meeting at 7:30 amongst our staff, similar to what we would do during the regular season. So in order to be ready for that meeting, we're usually up and in the building. I'm getting up about 5 a.m. and probably in the building before 6, and just getting ready for that meeting, preparing for the day. But again, it's just a lot of moving parts when you have that many people. There's the clover leaf where you've got 4 fields going at one time, and then we've got people in the stadium doing things. So it just pulls people in a lot of different directions, and we just have to stay on our toes to make sure that we're covered. But the one nice thing about having games at 1:00, and with the new rule so far, it's been good that they're getting done fairly early, and we get to have usually get to have a nice evening at home, or at least able to go out and grab a good bite to eat instead of being here all hours of the day. But like I said, that's the biggest thing right now. Is it is busy. I'll agree with Ryan and Tomas 100% on that. There's definitely something to do at all points in time during the day.
Sure. And it's interesting you mentioned the World Baseball Classic. I want to touch on that a bit now. We spoke with Tomas Vera, who we've mentioned a few times here. He's actually the head athletic trainer with Team Venezuela for the WBC. He's done that. I think this is his 5th or 6th time being the head athletic trainer for his home country, which is awesome. We talked to Tomas about his experience in working with players from other big league clubs, and I thought that was very interesting. Is there anything you guys do differently besides maybe everyone coming to camp, like you mentioned, with your players who are going to the WBC?
We've really, the pitchers are kind of doing their own thing still, but all of our position players that we have going, we've mapped out a game schedule for them leading up to when they have to depart for the WBC. So, it's a little bit quicker ramp up for them. They have to be ready to play full 9-inning games by, March 9th or 10th over here in Arizona, and probably around the same time for those that are going to Florida. So we really wanted to make sure that there was a gradual buildup for them still, and they weren't getting too taxed by having to play those 9-inning games without building up gradually to get to it. So that's probably the biggest thing for us, is just making sure that their workload and their volume is going to be acceptable for them. And, you know, it gives them the best chance to compete in a full game in about a week and a half time.
Yeah, it sure is coming up quickly. And I'd love to know more about the communication between athletic trainers at the WBC. Do you have pretty intense or frequent communication with the athletic trainers who are taking care of the guys on your team?
You know, those guys, all the athletic trainers from the other organizations, like all the different countries that are being represented, they've all reached out. They've been very proactive in trying to find out, you know, are there any guys with any conditions that we need to worry about? You know, do they need any special treatment, things like that? And, you know, even going down to like, do they have any dietary restrictions and, you know, stuff like that. So I know it's tough on them because they're trying to do their work with the major league or with their spring trainings as well. But at the end of the day, they're still committed to getting all the information for the WBC players, and I commend them for that.
And do you think, you know, sending players to the WBC has an impact on the rest of the season and the workload? Or is it kind of, you know, you guys do such a great job, like you mentioned, of ramping up to get them prepared that it really doesn't have much of an impact as the season goes along?
Well, I think that it can. It's been, 6 years, I guess, now since we've had a WBC. So the last one in 2017, you know, I can't recall anybody that came back and really had any issues because they ramped up too quickly. But prior to that, I mean, definitely recall that some guys, because they weren't very well prepared when they went, they ended up with some long-term injuries from it. And you just kind of do your best to prevent that if you can. I mean, there's no way to stop it. You do your best to control it. So I think the communication with the athletic trainers that are going is key, and they'll let us know if they think somebody needs an extra day here and there, and we just have to listen to them because we don't have our own eyes on them.
Sure, that makes total sense. And obviously communication and athletic training, from what we've learned from a lot of our guests, is hugely important. I want to jump back a bit to kind of you growing up in Canada and relate this to the athletic training profession. You're specifically in baseball. You spent your entire career in that sport. You mentioned working and growing up as a hockey fan and a hockey player. Do you guys, as athletic trainers with the Angels, have pretty frequent communication with athletic trainers in other sports, for example, the NHL, NFL, or NBA?
Yeah, actually, funny you asked that. I was just in contact with the Anaheim Ducks guys just a couple days ago. Their arena is across the parking lot from our stadium, and you know, it's a great networking piece, being able to talk to those guys and share experiences with them. And I was fortunate enough at the end of our season, they were just rolling, and I got over and watched them go through their emergency action plan to kind of see how they did things so that I can pick their brains and see how we can improve on ours. And, you know, I do think that having those contacts with other sports and organizations is very beneficial. You know, there's so much to be learned from gaining experiences from those people working in other sports that it's just invaluable.
Absolutely. And I do want to give, you know, we talked about so many athletic training staffs. I do want to give you a second to kind of recognize your staff. We talked about Rick and the work he does, but love to hear more about how your staff is organized and give you a chance to mention everyone you work with.
Yeah. So like you said, Rick Smith right now, he's our athletic training services coordinator, and he deals with a ton of the workman's comp stuff for us, which is, you know, that's some of the stuff that you don't want to have deal with on a day-to-day basis, but he does a great job at it. He's on top of everything. And, you know, he gets to live at home in Southern California and be with his family every night. So it's a great situation for him and us. Eric Munson is the number one assistant athletic trainer, and he's going into, I believe, his 17th year with the Angels and starting his 7th with in the major leagues. He was here before I was, and he's just been, you know, invaluable to me as coming in as the new guy to the organization and having to try and get my feet under me. You know, I leaned on him a ton, and He gave me a lot of guidance along the way as to how things have been done, and we just kind of feed off each other and work to see how we can make things better, based on what he's done in the past and the different experiences that I've had along the way as well. So he's been great. The players love him. He's got a lineup some days for people that are waiting to see him, and a tireless worker when it comes right down to it. Matt Biancuso is my number 2 assistant athletic trainer. He came over from the Minnesota Twins, where he spent 4 years. But a very interesting background with Matt is he didn't go through the minor leagues. He was working for Cirque du Soleil, got a job with the Minnesota Twins at the major league level after working with Cirque du Soleil. So, again, just a different background, but a great technical clinician. He's on top of everything, a lot of attention to detail. And, again, he's another guy that players will line up to let him work on them. And I couldn't be happier that he's part of our staff.
Yeah, you guys really do have a bunch of awesome guys and women on staff, and it's really impressive the work you're doing. Mike, I really want to thank you for joining the show. It's been awesome talking to you. To wrap up today's episode, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment that we call Extra Bases. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions, and hopefully you'll be able to share some insight into your favorite things about athletic training. So we will start off at first base here. I'd love to know, what is your favorite athletic training room to work in the big leagues?
Favorite athletic training room? I think some of the newer stadiums, they've really taken care to make sure that the visiting athletic training rooms are fully decked out. And I was fortunate enough to work on the home side in Atlanta, but the visiting side got all the amenities we could ask for as well. Not just in the training room, but in the clubhouse, the kitchen area, the lounge, all of it, I think, is top notch there. But Yankee Stadium's probably a close second in that one.
That it's interesting as we do more of these shows. I think we've had 3, maybe even 4 of the first 7 interviews mention that Atlanta is the best of the best. So really kudos to them, and George and everybody over there doing a great job. Moving on to second base. What is your favorite major league stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
Well, I think they're all great when you have a front row seat and you're able to watch a major league game from the dugout. But some of them they just have so much history in them. And I don't know that I could name just one, but, being able to look out in Fenway and see the Green Monster, the Ivy at Wrigley, in Pittsburgh, you've got the skyline for the backdrop with the bridges there. And St. Louis, you've got the Arch. Like, there's just so many different nuances to every one of the ballparks that I don't know if I could pick one, but I'm just fortunate that every day I get to watch a game from the best seat in the house.
Yeah, you guys definitely are in a very unique position where you're not a player, you are not a coach or a manager, but you're right there in the dugout with the front row seat, which is absolutely incredible. Moving on to third base, do you have a favorite city to visit on the road? Not necessarily for the baseball or the stadium or for your work, but for things to do in the city outside of sports? Yeah.
One of the things I like to do is get out and walk around. I like to go exploring, see a little bit of the sights and things like that. And for me, Boston is probably one of the best walking cities to go to. There's so much history there, and you can walk along the Freedom Trail and just see all the different sites along the Charles River, everywhere along there. And I'd say Boston is probably one of my favorites, and then San Francisco, I think, would come in a close second on that.
Yeah, I think many of our guests have also agreed. Boston, Chicago, San Francisco seem to be some of the favorite cities of PBATS members. So it's definitely a theme there. Moving on to home plate for our last question here. Was there at any point in your first year or 2 in the big leagues that you had a welcome to Major League Baseball moment as an athletic trainer?
Yeah, I'd probably say there's got to be a couple, but I think first of all, I'd say probably when George called me in the off season of 2009 going into 2010. And he said that he was going to be bringing me up to the big leagues as his assistant. That was probably the first moment. And then the second would probably be opening day in that 2010 season. So being Canadian on the field in Toronto, listening to the Canadian anthem, the big Canadian flag in the outfield. George was the head trainer, obviously. And just a little background on that. Both of our dads had passed away, and while the anthem's playing, he whispers to me that our dads are together right now, and they're looking down at both of us smiling. So every day I'm on the line at the anthem for opening day, that's what I think of, even though George isn't there beside me.
That's just so awesome. I know you and George go way back, and such an amazing experience that you just shared with us there. So we appreciate it. Mike, thank you so much for joining the show. Couldn't appreciate your time more and your dedication to PBATS and the profession of athletic training. We really hope to have you on the show again soon, and wish you and your staff all the best of luck this coming season.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. I really enjoyed it.
And that wraps up this episode. Thank you for listening to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, a show for athletic training students, educators, and professionals who want to learn more about life as an athletic trainer in major and minor league baseball. If you've enjoyed the show, head over to pbats.com to gain access to other free resources. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks again for listening.